Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Thistle National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We'll get into a couple of interesting herbs here in just a few minutes. Before we, I like to do the recipe first. Everybody always enjoys the recipes, and I get a lot of feedback on the recipes actually. We're still working through my newest herb book, which is the Medicinal Grasses and Weeds, or Weeds and Grasses, I guess, for the American South. And actually, as I always say, these grow everywhere. That's the thing about weeds. They grow everywhere. So unless you live, I don't even know, the highest elevations of the Rocky Mountains or the desert Southwest, pretty much everything in that book's going to be growing where you live. And even then, probably 2/3 of it will grow where you live. You'll still spot it sometimes. And, mentioning my books, remember we're getting close to Christmas. My books make great Christmas gifts. So do my spoons and my baskets, my woodcraft. So if you're looking for unique gifts, the spoons are hand carved with just knives and an axe. The baskets are absolutely handmade. It takes many hours to make a basket. So one of a kind, truly unique gifts. Me working on some breadboards and charcuterie boards and such this week, and pretty soon some bowls. I got some nice cherry wood I'm gonna be working with. So take a look at that, and I give a hand signed note, thank you note, and numbered everything. So they're very collectible stuff. If that's a unique gift you're looking for, I think they're very affordable, especially for the amount of work that goes into them. And you can find those on judsoncarrollwoodcraft.substack.com, and there'll be a link in the show notes as always. And then of course the books. I've got a wide variety of books out there now. I have 11 published right now. Should have a 12th by the end of the month is my goal. Actually, the end of November, so the end of next month. I'm recording this on like October 29, so the end of next month, God willing, I'll get that book out there. But if the person's not interested in herbs, the cookbook, I think everybody, I've not gotten any bad feedback on the cookbook. Just people really like it. And then I've got my Catholic books as well, if you're interested in religion. So as I like to say, I'd love to be under your Christmas tree this year. So remember me when it comes time for gift buying, if you would. And another option, if I guess one of those like last minute gifts, or it can be with forethought. A nice gift to give someone is actually a subscription to my Substack newsletter. Yeah, my Substack newsletter is absolutely free for anybody who wants to listen to it. But when you subscribe at $8 a month, it's pretty inexpensive. You're supporting my work. You enable me to, put food on the table and keep doing what I'm doing, giving away all this herbal info for free. And it's a nice gift for someone else. And what I actually do, even if it's just a 1 month subscription, I send the person a free ebook of their choice. So you can actually buy them a book and a subscription, book of their choice and a subscription for as little as $8. And that's such a good deal because normally my ebooks sell for $9.99. So you're actually saving $2. And of course, if you were to subscribe for multiple months, they get multiple books. So you can look at it. You could buy a year's subscription for somebody you really care about. They get every one of my books if they want them, you know. And honestly, that's just a really good buy. And there's also the option of a lifetime subscription. There's actually been one person who's done that. Again, all my books and my personal email to ask me any questions, and probably a couple of bonus gifts, actually. So, remember me when it's time for Christmas shopping this year, or Hanukkah, or whatever you do. So, yeah, if you're into Hanukkah gifts, they're usually like multiple smaller items, unless you're very wealthy, um, you could give a variety of my work to someone, right? You could, every day of Hanukkah, they could have one of my books or a subscription or a spoon. Hey, go for it. Anyway, I'm just kidding around, but let's talk about the recipe for the day. And this, the recipes always come from my book, Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. A couple of side dishes that I think people really, in my opinion, they don't do them right. And I think it's because of the way things have been marketed to us. We're going to talk about a couple of very simple things. And it's so weird to me that people can screw this up so badly. The first is a baked potato. All right, you may be thinking, I know how to bake a potato. Most people don't. I'm going to say 90 to 95% of Americans do not know how to bake a potato. And it's actually because of one restaurant chain, probably the most influential restaurant chain in the history of the United States, was Howard Johnson's. Howard Johnson's used to have a restaurant and motor court, essentially a hotel, in just about every decent sized city, especially near an interstate or a major road in the entire United States. In many ways, the American diet, especially from, say, the 1940s on, was shaped by Howard Johnson's. So many of the dishes we take for granted, even Baskin's and Robbins ice cream, started out as a variety of ice cream flavors in a Howard Johnson's. The Trader Vic's Tiki Bar started out in Howard Johnson's. Started the entire Tiki Bar movement and all these cocktails. If you've ever had a Mai Tai or something, you would not have had that had Trader Vic not partnered with Howard Johnson. Even margaritas. Yeah, that's more of a Mexican thing, but it was really the tiki bars that introduced tequila to the American drinking public. Most of their drinks, though, were rum-based, obviously, as a tiki bar. But, yeah, those sweet cocktails that people just take for granted now began in the Trader Vic's. That's also where America got its taste for fried rice. They made sort of like a Polynesian, Asian kind of island mix of food. Trader Vic's cookbooks are really cool, by the way. He was a really interesting guy, real guy. And like man food, kind of like if you like Jimmy Buffett, grab yourself a Trader Vic's cookbook or one of my cookbooks because I have a lot of interesting recipes in there too. But the other thing, of course, that Howard Johnson's brought us was Jacques Pepin. Jacques Pepin had been the head chef for the president of France. He was top notch. Worked his way up from a family-owned kitchen to the absolute height of the profession. Yeah, you could say, well, he could have cooked at the Ritz in Paris or La Tour d'Argent, okay. But cooking for the president of France, and I guess it was de Gaulle at the time. That was a pretty big deal. He also cooked for some of the British royalty and different things. And he was hired to design the entire menu for Howard Johnson's. Come in, revamp it, take it from a restaurant that had begun using a lot of frozen food back to what it needed to be. And so Howard Johnson's brought us Jacques Pepin. And Jacques Pepin brought us so many of those dishes that we now just think of as synonymous with American food, even though they're of French origin. One thing Howard Johnson's did, which screwed everybody up, was their baked potato. They would bake their potatoes and then wrap them in foil and then reheat them and take them to the table in the foil. So everybody began to think that a baked potato should be wrapped in tin foil and then baked. That is not the way you bake a potato. It's actually dangerous to do that. If you wrap your potato in tinfoil, it seals all that moisture in, and you take it off and if you sit in the fridge, it can grow a toxic mold that can kill you. So that was just a convenience, a time-saving thing. They didn't have to take an hour to bake a potato. They would pre-bake their potatoes, wrap them in tinfoil, reheat them before taking them to the table. People would have their steak and potato, and the tinfoil would be around it. Okay, that's not the way to bake a potato. That's, like I said, actually somewhat dangerous. Here's how you bake a potato. Get whatever potato you like. I think a russet is perfect for baking. I mean, that's just, russet Idaho potato is bred for this. But whatever potato you like, put a little oil on the palm of your hand and rub that potato down with oil and then liberally salt it. Then stick it in the oven for, 45 minutes to an hour at about 400 degrees. Depends on the size of the potato. That way, the skin is actually crunchy, crispy. Like those, another restaurant that kind of defined our taste was TGI Fridays in the 80s. And they had those baked potato skins, loaded baked potato skins, which were so good. Well, that texture is what is actually the right texture for the skin of a potato. You're going to want to eat the potato skin if you do it that way. Take it out of the oven, let it cool down for a minute till you can touch it. Take a knife or a fork and kind of cut a little slit or perforate the top right in the center in a straight line, going down the length of the potato. Sit it on your plate or your counter. You can sit on a paper towel. I don't care. I don't worry about making a little mess when I cook. And take the heels of your hands. That's, the bottoms of your palms. And you're going to smack the potato on either end like you're clapping your hands. All right. Don't bring your hands all the way together. Just give it a good pop. And then the potato will poof up in the middle. Where you did that cut, when you smack it like that, the inside of the potato is going to push up, and you're going to have that delicate, fluffy potato. You're not going to have that hard potato you have to scoop out. No, it's going to be that delicate, fluffy, light. It's the impact that separates all the potato bits. And then, on top of that, you can put your butter. Obviously, I do a lot of butter, sour cream, grated cheese, especially cheddar or blue cheese. Cannot beat blue cheese. Crumbled bacon. I always do some, I always use Creole seasoning. I put that on just about everything. But a little garlic powder, definitely. Whatever you like. A little chopped green onion. That is how you eat a baked potato. That's how you cook a baked potato. And if you do that, if you don't ever wrap it in foil, if you actually roast it skin on, and you get that wonderful, potato chip crispy skin and that nice fluffy potato restaurant style inside, soaked with all kinds of good fatty, salty, good stuff. You're going to really crave baked potatoes. You're going to want to eat them all the time. So now the number two thing that people do wrong, I think, also has to do with marketing. Old El Paso is really who introduced most Americans to refried beans, followed only by maybe Taco Bell. The refried beans that they use are very different than traditional Mexican refried beans. I have a friend from Oaxaca. I run into her every now and then. We trade recipes, and she was just amazed that I was buying avocado leaf and epazote one day. Well, I was going to make refried beans. You don't have to use both. If I can only use one, I'm going to use avocado leaf for the flavor. But let me get back to the old El Paso or Taco Bell style refried beans. They actually, the bean is not actually refried. It actually is cooked in a way that's like a big, like steam jet engine almost, so it explodes on the sides of the vessel when it's scraped off, and it becomes old El Paso or Taco Bell style refried beans. To the best of my knowledge, I've seen a documentary on it like years ago, and I saw the old El Paso plant, and it's really hard to describe exactly how that works. But here's how you make real refried beans. Like when you go to a good Mexican restaurant and the beans are so delicious you can't believe it? All right. You can use pintos or black beans. You could really use the bean of your choice. Okay. One of my favorite beans is actually called the Eye of the Goat. Usually goes by a Spanish name. The bean itself tastes like filet mignon. It tastes like the finest quality beef. So I mean, you could use Anasazi beans. You could use the Eye of the Goat bean, whatever you like, right? But soak your beans overnight. Make sure before you put them in the pot with water, you picked out any rocks or sand or anything like that. But usually our beans are fairly clean. It's not the way it used to be. Soak your beans overnight. Cook your beans. Cook your beans with salt, with crushed avocado leaf. That's what gives it that unique, almost a slightly anise or bay leaf like flavor. And bay and avocado are not interchangeable. You got to use avocado leaf. Even though they're in the same family, the bay laurel and the avocado, they do not taste the same. And the avocado leaf is much more mild. So use that. You're going to want to leave them whole and then pick them out when you're done, unless you just crumble them up real fine into powder. And you can use them as a dry spice that way. Cumin, cumino, that's the other essential flavor. And then if you have it, epazote. Very, very hard to buy epazote in an American store. You may find it in a Mexican tienda. If you learn to identify it, you'll probably see it as a fairly common weed growing around, and it does have some very good medicinal properties. This is one of those wonderful weeds that is really good for preventing flatulence, for one thing. Good for an upset stomach, good for digestion. Epazote is very good. I don't consider it to be essential, but I'll definitely use it when I have it. And the other key ingredient is lard. Real, honest to goodness lard. If you have to use store-bought hydrogenated, that pure white lard, okay. Still better than using any other fat in the store. Much better if you can get real lard from someone who raises pigs. Honest lard. And if not, how about bacon drippings? Save your bacon drippings till you got enough. As your beans cook and that liquid begins to reduce to just barely any liquid in there, go ahead and mix in like 4 tablespoons of lard. Copious amounts of lard. But I'm talking for like 8 ounces of beans. I mean, you want a lot of lard in here. And mix it in, and then just start smashing the beans with the back of your spoon, or you can use a potato masher. Salt and pepper to taste. I usually throw in some crushed red pepper, just give it a little heat. And that's fantastic. That's absolutely going to change your mind about refried beans if you've been using the canned version. And there's really no substitute for homemade refried beans. Even the really good Mexican brands, I've tried them all. You cannot compare. And if you do use, like, I don't know, La Cristina or probably Goya has one, I think. I'm not sure. If you do use a canned refried beans, still cook them with some avocado leaf, some cumin, a little garlic. Yeah, a little garlic's really good in there too. That's going to make all the difference. Finely minced onion, if you want. That's not traditional. That is not, but it's really good. And then, those are just simple. I mean, the economy's bad and people are looking to cut corners. Well, potatoes and beans are still cheap. And so learning to use them in a variety of ways is going to be one of the best things you could do for yourself and your family. The refried beans usually come free at a Mexican restaurant as an accompaniment. You get the beans, you get the rice, you get maybe a little guacamole salad when you buy some, I don't know, chimichangas, right? Man, I love chimichangas. I know that's like, I mean, if you're of Mexican heritage out there, you're like freaking out because that's like not real Mexican food. I don't care. It is a deep fried burrito. That is fantastic. I mean, yes, America has improved on Mexican cuisine, even Oaxacan cuisine, in that one regard, and it's that deep fried burrito we call a chimichanga. It's so delicious. But anyway, I usually get fajitas, but whatever. The rice and beans are really one of my favorite aspects of the meal. And I told you before how to make the Mexican restaurant style rice. And all these recipes are in my book, The Omnivore's Guide. But, rice is inexpensive as well, relatively. It's gone up a little bit. But I'll just run through it real quick. Take about, I'm just going to give you general proportions. You always go 2 to 1 water to rice. So if you have a half cup rice, you use a cup of water. If you have a cup of rice, you use 2 cups of water, right? Well, preferably use chicken broth instead of water. Take your rice, put some olive oil in a pan. I suppose you could use lard. I always use olive oil. Get it, medium heat, just, hot enough to kind of shimmer in the pan. Toss in your rice, and preferably using one of my hand-carved wooden spoons. Start stirring it around back and forth, moving it around. Let that rice get toasted in the oil. The rice will actually turn a nice kind of tan. Don't burn it, but do brown it, okay? And that's the secret, really. That's the pilaf style of cooking rice, which is browning it in that oil. Push it to the sides. Leave, add a little more oil to your pan. Toss in um, preferably some finely chopped onion, smashed and chopped garlic, and or a combination of pico de gallo or a good homemade salsa. My recipes for pico and salsa are in the book. You could actually use store-bought salsa. It's not going to hurt my feelings. You just really want that combination of onion, garlic, tomato, cilantro, cumin, salt and pepper, hot peppers. You could absolutely chop all that up and add it like that, but then you've just made pico, so why not go ahead and make some pico? And put it in there, stir it around in the rice. It'll stop the cooking, the browning of the rice, and then add your chicken stock, salt and pepper to taste, um, lid on, cook it, about 15 minutes, sit off the burner, let it sit for 5, fluff it up with a fork, and you got that wonderful Mexican restaurant style rice. You take that rice, you put it with the beans, and it's fantastic. Anything you have along with that is going to be great. So, all right, we discussed, the baked potato, the classic American side dish that you've probably been doing wrong. Most people do. It's an amazing thing. Thanks to Howard Johnson's and your refried beans, which also most people do wrong, unless they're actually from Mexico. My friend from Oaxaca, her mother started a catering business, and I may be doing some volunteer work just to learn some of those moles and such because Oaxacan food, if you've only had well, you have so many different regions of Mexico, and there's so many different nations in South America, which all have different food. El Salvador is totally different from Brazil, which is totally different from Argentina, etc. But also the regions of Mexico are totally different. And Oaxacan food is probably the oldest. I mean, it goes back to like Mayan and Aztec and Toltec. I mean, probably the oldest. And actually, in terms of flavor and complexity, um, probably one of the top 3 cuisines in the entire world. I mean, absolutely, yeah. And usually the only appliance they'll have in a house is a blender to make the salsa. This is stuff made with a molcajete, which is like a big mortar and pestle. This is hand made tortillas, but the sauces can be so complex. I mean, like 90 ingredients in some of these crazy, like super complex moles. But then it can also just be very simple and just very good. And I would absolutely put it on par with the finest French food, German food, Italian, Chinese. I mean, you think about the greatest cuisines on earth, and Oaxacan food deserves to be in anybody's top 5. It's just most people, all we get is, like cheap Tex-Mex, which, hey, I love cheap Tex-Mex. I'll go eat a chimichanga and eat my weight in salsa and chips any day. Uh, Fajitas, big steaming, sizzling platters of fajitas coming out of the table, and grab me a Dos Equis dark, and man, I'm good to go. But no, seriously, if you want to get into the like really authentic cooking, Rick Bayless's first cookbook, Authentic Mexican Cooking from the Heart of Mexico, really good starting place. Super good. The dude annoys me. I mean, I can't even really enjoy his show because I find his personality so annoying, but his cookbook is fantastic. In fact, we mentioned Jacques Pepin a while ago, and there was an episode where I guess it was prearranged, but they act like they had just run into each other at um, whatever little town where Jacques Pepin takes a vacation on the coast of Mexican coast. And they say, oh, well, hey, it's you. Okay, let's go back to your place. Let's cook together, right? And you could see, I mean, in all honesty, you could see Bayless was getting all over Jacques Pepin's nerves. And so he starts like kind of picking on him, or picking on Jacques Pepin, trying to get him to interact more on the show. Because, I mean, Jacques a real talkative, easygoing guy. He's a lot like me, actually. He's a lot like my French great grandfather, actually. Um, and has to like explain, like Alton Brown would do. He has to explain everything about every ingredient. And Pepin's just sitting over there, like, leaning his head on his hand, leaning against the counter, just not communicating. But he keeps pouring wine because he always drinks wine while he cooks. And Rick Bayless says something about, and now I've finished this dish, and Jacques had about 3 glasses of wine. Jacques, should I pour you another glass? Can I get you to cook something if I give you some wine? And Jacques looks at him and says, Rick, I have to drink the wine because I have to cook with you. I mean, you could tell this guy was getting all over his nerves for the fact, I think a lot of it was kind of, tongue in cheek, but yeah, I think the wine was definitely helping Jacques Pepin get through that episode. But anyway, now let's talk about herbs. If you can't tell, I'm a huge Jacques Pepin fan. I mean, literally, he is so much like my family. Actually, my grandmother's side of the family, going back like 300 years ago or so, came from like the next town over from where his family came from. So, we really do have a lot of similar influences and probably genetics. And I just think he's great. I just think he's fantastic, and he so reminds me of my family. And believe he's about 90 now. I mean, he's still just, I mean, at least mid 80s, right? And he's still cooking up a storm, and he's written some of the best cookbooks ever written, I think. I mean, I've got Escoffier's cookbook. I've got so many classic French cookbooks. His, and then I've got On Cooking, which is like, the textbook for most culinary schools, especially like Culinary Institute of America and such as that. Jacques Pepin's Essentials or Essential Techniques, I think, blows them away. Heads and shoulders. I mean, it's literally like taking a culinary school class just to try to, start cooking through his Essential Techniques and then Essential Pepin. I believe they were written maybe 30 years apart. Uh, Better than going to culinary school, really. So let's talk about herbs. First one, I think I'm actually going to talk about a couple, maybe three today. The first is cardamom. Cardamine, I should say, not cardamom, the spice, but cardamine, also known as bittercress. Bittercress, also called hairy bittercress, flickweed even, springcress, a few different things, is mainly regarded as a wild edible food. It's something we forage for. It's a nice spring green. It's one you're going to look for in early spring. And there's not much medicinal use documented except that it is what they call anti-scorbutic. All that means is it would help prevent scurvy. It contains some vitamin C. And as it's an early spring green, that's actually very important. Such plants were essential to our ancestors. I mean, after long winters of eating basically salt cured meats and potatoes, they needed something fresh and green for fiber and for vitamin C. And cardamine or bittercress, several members of the cress family, several members of the brassica family, and the Appalachians, poke greens, etc., essential just to stay alive and also to strengthen the immune system. But very much like we use it here in the mountains, Sophie Hodorowicz-Nab tells us that in Poland, it was a popular wild edible and used to cleanse the blood. That's what people used to say. Generally, that means a spring tonic, as described. The Cherokee used cardamine, though, and they used specifically the native cardamine heterophylla, I believe is the way you pronounce it, as a poultice of the beaten up roots made into a poultice to draw out pain from headaches, wounds, swelling. So they would apply it for a full day or 2 days. And the root was also said to be good for colds, just chewing on the root or making a tea and used as a tea, it was also good for sore throat. The next one we'll talk about is Centaurea solsticitalis. That's a Barnaby's thistle, also known as yellow star or yellow knapweed. And it grows wild. I mean, we have so many thistles around where I live, and they're all edible. Um, you usually use the stalks on them, but this is the same plant family from which we get things like artichoke, the thistles. Um, anyway, but this one specifically, Barnaby thistle, has been used medicinally. And Plants for a Future says the powdered seed used as a remedy for stone. Now that means kidney or bladder stones, gravel, as they say, and the powdered root said to be a cure for fistula and gravel. Makes sense, okay, because the like artichoke and there's what's the smaller version of the artichoke? It's right on the tip of my tongue. There's a very similar plant to artichoke, and it's actually a little closer to being more like a thistle. Both have good diuretic properties and have traditionally been used against urinary gravel, as they say. And I think we'll wrap it up with Cerastium glomeratum. You know what that is? It's chickweed. Chickweed, one of my absolute favorite wild edible plants, and one of my favorite herbs. And specifically, the one that grows around here the most is the glomeratum, which means clammy chickweed or sticky chickweed, also called sticky mouse ear chickweed, and sometimes just mouse ear chickweed, although there are two chickweeds called mouse ear chickweed. Chickweed is absolutely delicious and nutritious. It's one of the very first plants to come up. It's small. You could grow it in your garden, but most people don't. Once you identify it, you'll start finding it growing everywhere. It was once commonly grown as a garden green, especially to put in salads in the early spring when you needed that blood cleanser, as they call it, but also as a forage for chickens, which is where it gets its name. Our ancestors brought in probably three varieties, maybe more, of chickweed from Europe and the British Isles and planted it everywhere someone kept chickens. And we really should be doing this now because it's very healthy for the chickens. Everything grazes on all birds, deer, rabbits. Very healthy for you. And this is not something we should be looking at as a weed. This is one of the most useful plants, even though it's small. It's not showy. Really quite good. Gerard, in his time in the 1500s, actually listed 13 plants as chickweed, using them all similarly, even though they were not all cerastium. Okay, but he said of the leaves of chickweed, the leaves of chickweed boiled in water, very soft, adding thereto some hog's grease, the powder of fenugreek and linseed, and a few roots of marshmallow, and stamped together to form a cataplasm or poultice, taking away the swellings of the legs and any other part, bringeth to suppuration or matter hot aposthumes. What does that mean? Uh, he means it would help basically heal up anything from boils to hot swellings and such as that. Dissolveth swellings that would not willingly yield to suppuration, easeth members that are shrunk up, comforteth wounds in the sinewy parts, defendeth foul, malign, and virulent ulcers from inflammation during the cure. In a word, let's sum it up. He said, it comforteth, it digesteth, it defendeth, and it suppereth. Very notably. All right, so the 1500s England, Elizabethan, and even that's a little extreme even for Gerard. He basically said it was good for wound healing, good for inflammation, um, just very soothing to the entire system. He said the leaves boiled in vinegar and salt are good against manginess of the hands or legs if they be bathed therewith. He probably was not actually talking mange. Um, It probably wouldn't hurt with mange. I actually know some better remedies for mange. One of the Cherokee remedies for mange was actually horse nettle. Speaking of, yeah, weeds, we'll get into horse nettle at some point. That's actually in the same family as Jimson weed. It's actually very good against mange. But this, he's probably talking more about eczema, some kind of dermatitis type thing. He mentions that little birds in cages are refreshed with the lesser chickweed when they load their meat, whereupon it was called some passerina. I have no idea what that means, but yes, it was popular for your parakeets and such. Birds love chickweeds. I mean, all birds. Really good if you want to have birds. And why wouldn't you want to have birds in your garden? I mean, if you're interested in growing herbs or vegetables, definitely put in a few bird baths and some good forage for the birds because the birds are going to come in and they're going to eat a lot of the bugs and they're going to poop all over the place and that gives you fertilizer. Birds are actually birds in your vegetable or herb garden and or with a few exceptions are some of your biggest helpers. Can really cut down your need for any kind of chemical pesticides or fertilizers. Of course, there are some that like to eat your vegetables. I happen to love crows. I'm a big fan of crows, but they can be a little pesky. And pigeons, yes, pigeons prefer seeds to bugs. Most birds love insects. I mean, that's like their main food. But pigeons will eat seeds. So if you're trying to grow anything for seed, for grain, pigeons can be an issue. And then, of course, chickens will eat everything. Chickens are omnivores. They will absolutely peck and everything. You won't have tomatoes if you have chickens. They love them. Ducks are good. Ducks will go after the bugs. They have those big web feet though. They can actually compact the soil. The same with geese. And there's some geese that like to eat small plants, so you can't put them in the garden when things are just coming in. They're called weeder geese. They're actually quite useful once your garden's mature to let the geese go through there and pull up weeds. That's what they do. They love them. Guinea fowl are fantastic. Guineas thrive. I mean, a guinea will position itself by a fire ant hill, for instance. Probably my least favorite insect is a fire ant. A guinea will sit there, and every time an ant comes up, he'll eat it. And he will not leave that spot until he's eaten every single ant in the ant hill. They're phenomenal. They're fantastic. They scream at everything and will drive you insane. But they eat mice, they eat snakes. They'll actually protect your chickens against hawks and such. So are crows, by the way. Crows are really good. I like to attract crows to my property. I think they're great. Crows are smart. They're funny. They're fun to be around, and they're actually quite tasty meat. If you want to harvest some crow breast with wrapped in bacon and grilled up, or maybe a little marinade in some soy sauce, kind of teriyaki kind of thing. Really, some of the best eating you're going to get. Quail, quail are also really good. They like bugs. They will eat some seeds. They're will eat the bugs. And if you could only keep like one small fowl, you could keep a little quail house real easy in your yard, and no one would even know it was there. And quail are fantastic eating. Probably one of the tastiest birds there is. They're quiet, they're gentle, they don't make a lot of noise, a lot like doves in that regard. Um, and yeah, they're fantastic in the garden. They really are. But yeah, so back to chickweed. Miss Grieve tells us 1931. She had, by that time, the taxonomy, as they call it, had been broken down quite a bit. She mentions how Gerard had called about 13 plants that weren't chickweed, you know. But she's talking specifically about the Serraceum, the real chickweed. She said it is a variable plant. Let's see. Medicinal actions, demulcent, refrigerant, that means softening and cooling. It has a great repute among herbalists, used mostly in the form of an ointment. Very good for skin conditions. Fresh leaves have been employed as a poultice for inflammations and indolent ulcers, which means sores that are hard to heal. Most beneficial results. A poultice of chickweed enclosed in muslin is a sure remedy for a carbuncle or an external abscess. The water in the chickweed is boiled. The water in which the chickweed is boiled should also be used to bathe the affected part. Combined with elecampane, chickweed has been recommended as a specific for hydrophobia, and the juice taken internally for scurvy. That's actually rabies. Now, I always say, if you get bit by a rabid animal, I would recommend getting medical care as quickly as possible. But don't assume all wild animals have rabies. Learn the symptoms so you don't end up euthanizing a stray cat or a dog or uh, I like raccoons too. I mean, my uncle raised some as pets, so I'm very fond of raccoons. I like to eat them as well, but I don't get sentimental about them, except when they're kits. So there's nothing cuter than a raccoon. I mean, imagine they're like kittens. They play. They're great, actually. But people see a raccoon, they assume it has rabies. No, no, 99% don't. Okay, so learn the symptoms of rabies. And remember, rabies is transferred through saliva, so the animal actually has to bite you, not just a scratch, usually. Anyway, I'm not going to say that with a blanket statement, but whatever. The plant chopped and boiled in lard makes a fine green cooling ointment, good for piles and sores. It's actually hemorrhoids and sores and cutaneous disease, skin diseases. And has also been employed in applications for ophthalmia, eye inflammations, essentially. The decoction made with a fresh plant is good for constipation. It's a tea made from chickweed. Remember, a decoction and infusion are just a tea. Uh, Good for coughs and hoarseness. Culpeper, she said, mentioned it as a fine, soft, pleasing herb under the dominion of the moon, and said it is found to be as effectual as purslane to all the purposes whereunto it serveth, except for meat only. What does that mean? Well, it's good as a vegetable, good, very, very good as a medicinal herb, and was good on the plate, except it wouldn't be a substitute for meat. Maybe he had some vegans in 1600s England that he had to admonish against trying to make purslane and chickweed into meat. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to make some knot dogs or tofurkey out of it. But anyway, he especially used it for inflammations and redness of the eyes. The juice of it dripped in the ear, good for ear inflammations. And he said it was good for the sinews that are shrunk or by cramps. So, I don't know. I think he was using it more as a poultice, but I think as a meal, it's really quite good. As I said, very popular in Europe, very popular in um, Austrian medicine, German folk medicine, used as both a food and an herb. And here in America, considered a weed. And when you think about all the wonderful properties these so-called weeds have, we'd be a lot better off growing our weeds instead of our fairly useless ornamental grasses. There are a few grasses like couch grass, cat grass that have some good uses, lemongrass especially. I'm not sure that's true grass actually, but anyway, some of the bamboos. But our lawn grasses are utterly useless and actually one of our biggest sources of pollution if you care about that kind of thing. I mean, I think everybody cares about pollution, but I actually mean like environmental degradation. All the watering, all the chemicals that have to be put on there, all the fertilization. Um, they put actually they have if you care about carbon footprints, which I absolutely don't. Being a carbon-based life form, I'm all for carbon. Your lawn is one of the biggest causes of so-called global warming, which I actually don't believe in, as man caused, anthropogenic. I mean, I believe the climate changes over the centuries and millennia. I know that for sure, but I don't think mankind can do a whole lot about it one way or the other, and you may disagree with me on that. But if you care about such things, actually your lawn is probably your biggest contribution to that so-called carbon footprint, even more than your car. Unless you drive an electric vehicle, in which case your car is actually more polluting than my old pickup truck, because most electricity is made from coal-fired plants and diesel-fired plants. So you're burning coal and diesel, or windmills that kill a lot of birds and apparently whales. And but anyway, you're burning coal and diesel to fuel your electric car that doesn't put off any exhaust, so you think it's clean. And meanwhile, the batteries are the next generation's toxic waste that no one knows how to deal with yet. If you think you're saving the world by buying an electric car, you're a fool. And about 5 minutes of research would tell you that you're actually the problem, not the solution, if there is a problem. As far as I'm concerned, give me an old diesel pickup truck. Hey, an old diesel Mercedes. You can put 400,000-500,000 miles on them. How much pollution does that reduce? Waste, in landfills and such. They can burn vegetable oil. I mean, I think it's a load of crap, honestly. And all you're doing is enriching China and causing problems for the next generation. So if you have an electric vehicle, quit patting yourself on the back. And instead of patting yourself on the back, you should probably be figuring out how to kick your own behind because, it's idiots like you that have put us in a position with the moron in the White House. So, senile, desiccated moron. Hey, anybody else really miss world peace and economic prosperity and gas under $2 a gallon? Yeah, I mean, I could go for some mean tweets right now. How about you? All right, y'all. Have a good one. I'll talk to you next week. I'm sure some of you are laughing and some of you are seething, and yeah, it's just what you're going to get when you listen to my show. I don't pull any punches, and I say things the way I call it, the way I see it, as they say. So anyway, y'all, have a good one, and remember, my books, my spoons, my baskets, cutting boards, bowls, etc. make excellent Christmas gifts. Look in the show notes, and I'll talk to you next week.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.